Hello and welcome. My name is Nathan Castle, and I'm a product engineer on the ArcGIS Runtime SDK team. This video is about the loadable pattern in ArcGIS Runtime. The loadable pattern is used throughout our API to load resources, whether they're from a local file or the network. Throughout this video, I'll be showing code samples from a small example application designed to demonstrate certain aspects of the pattern. In this video, you'll learn what the loadable pattern is and where it applies, how to start, cancel, and retry loading resources, how to keep your code as simple as possible with cascading loads, how the loadable pattern avoids duplicate loads, and how to monitor load status. Everything discussed in this video applies to classes that implement the iLoadable interface. All layers implement the iLoadable interface, as do map and scene. This interface defines the following properties and methods. Load async, retry load async, and cancel load allow you to start, cancel, and retry loads. Load error and load status allow you to examine the current load status. Loaded and load status changed events notify you when the item changes state. Before I go any further, I want to clarify what it means to be loaded. Loaded means that information about the resource has been populated. Examples of populated metadata include name, spatial reference, and extent. Loaded does not mean that all of the content has been downloaded and is ready for display. There are 4 possible load statuses: not loaded, loading, loaded, and failed to load. I'll discuss what those statuses mean in more detail throughout the rest of the video. Let's jump into some code for a simple scenario, loading a base map. First, create the base map from a URL. Then, call load async to load it. Now let's take a look at the base map both before and after it's loaded. Notice that before it's loaded, load status is not loaded, the name is empty, and the layer collections are null. After it loads, you'll see that the name and layer collections have been populated, and the load status is updated. Note that the layers themselves have not been loaded, only created. What happens if you call load async again? While this example is contrived, many real-world apps will share model objects, like maps and scenes, throughout the app, and you don't want to reload objects if you don't need to. Let's see what happens when you call load async again. Nothing. If the load is already in progress, the load continues. If the item has loaded or failed to load, it remains in that state. At this point, you're probably wondering how you can retry loading after a failure. For this, you'll need to be explicit and use retry load async. If the item is already loaded, retrying won't reload it. Now that you know how to start and retry loading, let's move on to canceling. Canceling is straightforward with the cancel load method. Note that you can only cancel loading an item that is actively being loaded. That is, its load status is loading. Once you call cancel load, the item transitions from the loading state to failed to load. One more thing to note. Loads that fail, whether that's due to user cancellation or some other issue, will throw exceptions. You should be careful to catch those exceptions and make sure that your app is in a valid state after they occur. You should catch potential exceptions for all calls to load async and retry load async. If you've called load async on the same object multiple times, for example, for multiple components of your app, exceptions will be raised for each call upon failure. At this point, we've covered all of the load states and how to start, cancel, and retry loads. There's just one more thing left to discuss, and that is cascading load dependencies. A common pattern in apps is that they need to load several resources in sequence. For example, you might have a feature layer that depends on a service feature table to be loaded, and a map that depends on the layer being loaded. ArcGIS Runtime makes this convenient by automatically loading dependencies. For example, showing a map in a map view will cause it to be loaded automatically. Then that map will load the layer, and loading the layer will load the feature table. Sometimes, failure to load a dependent resource will cause an item to fail to load. For example, if the feature layer can't load the feature table, the layer fails to load. In other cases, such as a map, failure to load a single layer won't affect others or the map itself. That was a lot to cover in one video, so let's recap. You've learned how to load resources following the loadable pattern, that you have to be explicit about retrying loads, and that multiple calls to load async won't duplicate work, that you can cancel loads that are in progress, and that load dependencies can be chained so that you only have to call load async once. You can check out the description below to find links to other resources, including devlabs, doc, and samples. The full source code for the app used in this video is available on GitHub. Thanks for watching.